Well, kia ora, good afternoon everyone. Good to see you all as we get into the home stretch of the year. We've got a very big legislative agenda ahead of us in the coming weeks as we close out 2024. Today, the second quarterly report on our government's 9 public service targets has been released for results to September 30 this year. And as you know, our government established targets to focus our public sector and government on delivering better results for New Zealanders in health, education, law and order, work, housing and the environment by 2030. Setting clear targets helps to focus resources, attention and accountability to improve the delivery and the quality of public services. And these deliberately ambitious targets sit alongside our quarterly action plans, our regular strategy committee sessions and the agenda of rebuilding the economy, restoring law and order and delivering better public services. They're critical mechanisms to ensure that the government and also the public service remain very focused on delivery for the New Zealand people. Now, these targets aren't just numbers, they are about taking meaningful action to drive progress, measure outcomes and create better futures for all. Regular reporting allows us to be responsive, to really get under the hood of what is going on in the public services that matter the most to New Zealanders, and to use the data to make interventions and also decisions that will make the biggest impact. It's encouraging to see fewer victims of violent crime and a reduction in youth offending. We still have a long way to go, but our government's extensive law and order agenda is laser focused on going after criminals and keeping Kiwis safe. Work to get families out of emergency housing is making significant headway, with data showing a more than 60% reduction from when we came into office. And this is a huge step forward, improving the lives of some of our most vulnerable families. And there's also been small improvements in emergency department and elective surgery wait times and in student attendance. However, we know that there is much more to be done. And we also expect results to move around between reporting periods, and we know that we won't always improve every quarter. For example, the number of people receiving the job seeker support benefit saw an increase of more than 8,000 this past quarter. No doubt life is still tough for many New Zealanders. Years of high inflation, high interest rates and a recession have taken their toll. But I'm confident that we're now turning the corner. Between tax relief, family boost, expanded working for families credits, inflation relief and mortgage relief, life is getting materially easier for Kiwis. For example, inflation is now down to 2.2%, the lowest in 3.5 years. Food inflation is down to 1.2% from 12.3%. We've seen wages grow faster than inflation for the 4 quarters in a row under this government versus 13 quarters in a row where it went backwards. And we have rents that are stable versus the $180 per week under a Labour increase. We see the OCR now down to 4.25%, and meaningfully that means for a Kiwi with a 25-year $500,000 mortgage, they could save around $180 per fortnight. We've seen 3 rate cuts under our government versus 12 rate rises under the previous one. And economic sentiment is improving. We see consumer confidence at a 3-year high. We see business confidence at a 10-year high. Now, we expect job seeker unemployment to track the economic cycle, and as the economy improves, those on job seeker will come down. Having said that, under Labour, despite lower unemployment and record job shortages, we actually saw 60,000 more people go on job seeker unemployment benefit, putting 40,000 more kids into benefit-dependent homes. Our government will always champion a welfare safety net to help Kiwis in genuine need. However, our strong expectation, as we have foreshadowed, is that those who are able to work should work. And the more people who are working and the fewer who are on welfare, the better for them, their future, the better for their families and the economy and for New Zealand. Quite simply, employment is always going to offer people and their families more independence, more choice, more opportunity and more money than welfare ever will. A life on welfare is not the way to maximise a young person's creativity and untapped potential. We want more for our young people. So we'll continue to do everything we can to get the economy growing so that we can create more employment and growth, but also to support people off welfare and into work and ultimately a better life for themselves and their families. And with that, I'll hand over to Louise Upston, who will provide a little bit more additional support on what else we're doing to get people on job seeker into work.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Today I'm pleased to talk about an essential step forward in our efforts to reduce long-term benefit dependency by supporting more people into work. The changes we are announcing today represent a clear commitment from our government to providing welfare that works for job seekers who are most at risk of long-term benefit dependency. We are not prepared to accept the welfare system handed to us by the previous government, where beneficiaries under the age of 25 were projected to spend 20 years on benefits over their lifetimes. We're not prepared to accept 13 years of welfare dependency as a fate for people on job seeker support who are ready to work now. We must ensure welfare is a stepping stone to opportunity, not a life sentence. We remain committed to having 50,000 fewer people on job seeker support by 2030. And to help achieve this, I'm pleased to announce that as of today, MSD is now offering phone-based employment case management to 10,000 people. This means the total number of people supported by an employment case manager at any given time is 70,000, up from about 53,000. These 70,000 will also begin receiving individual job plans, which are a cornerstone of our Welfare That Works program. These job plans will include a new comprehensive work readiness needs assessment that will go beyond a standard examination of someone's work history and their availability, looking at the root causes of what's holding them back from gaining employment. Case managers will dig deeper and consider any education, transport, addiction, health and childcare issues that a job seeker may also have. A plan will then be designed which includes actions and timelines to address the issues. Job seekers will be connected to the support services they need, whether it's literacy programs, driver licensing, mental health support or addiction counselling. But with increased support comes responsibility. Job seekers will be required to follow through on the agreed steps in their job plans, and those who fail to meet work testable actions may face sanctions through the new traffic light system. This initiative will provide robust support to job seekers while also empowering them to take ownership of their journey towards employment and self-reliance. It is not enough to simply offer financial assistance. Real empowerment comes when people are given the tools and the opportunities they need to fully participate in society. The introduction of individual needs assessment job plans and the expansion of MSD's case management services will equip job seekers with the support and structure they need and help break the shackles of welfare dependency that are holding them back. And with that, I'll hand back to you, Prime Minister.
Thanks, Louise. Look, in terms of this week, tomorrow I'll meet the Czech President, Petr Pavel, in Wellington. On Wednesday and Thursday I'll be in Southland before returning to Auckland. Parliament, as you will all know, has a different rhythm this week, given it's scrutiny week. And with that, Minister Upson and I are very happy to take your questions.
Minister, how
Jason.
much, well, to both of you actually, how much pressure does your 50k target by 2030 come under, given that you've seen an uptick of 8,000 in just one quarter?
Well, look, as I said, there's no doubt about it. We're seeing unemployment has been really challenged in the last quarter, and it's it's forecasted to actually get up to 5.2% from memory. It's at 4.8 today. That is a function of the lag effect of the inflation, the interest rates, and the recession that we've been experiencing. Employers can only hang on for so long with suppressed demand and rising costs, and they get squeezed, and they'll ultimately end up sadly laying off workers. And that's why we keep saying, if you care about working New Zealanders, you're a fiscal conservative and you run the economy well. So, we know that there is a real link here between job seeker and unemployment. Now, having said that, what was amazing, to be honest, in the previous administration was that correlation between unemployment and economic growth got disconnected, and you saw a situation where you actually had low levels of unemployment, high levels of job seeker, and that's the bit that we're trying to get back into play again. So we know there's work to do for us to continue to grow the economy, and we've broken the back, I think, of a lot of the cost of living pressures around inflation and around interest rates, and that's why our focus now moves to economic growth and also jobs. That's really where the opportunity is for us as we come out of this recession. But importantly, we also have to put in place obligations to make sure that job seeker and unemployment actually get correlated together.
Do you expect that this 8,000 in the September quarter is the peak of new beneficiaries coming into this?
Well, as I've said, you've got a forecast coming from us that I think has downgraded slightly from the Reserve Bank Governor last week. If I just remember to take that number, for example, we're at 4.8. up from 4.6.
We've got beneficiary numbers, so can you say that the 8,000 that we've seen in the September quarter is the peak, given that you say that you're remaining optimistic about the 2020 or the 2030 forecast?
Well, we're determined to deliver on 2030. We've still got a long way to go, obviously. There's two parts to that, as I'm trying to say. One is the link to economic growth, and the second part is the correlation between job seeker numbers and unemployment rates. The unemployment rate is forecast to lift a little bit further before it comes down, and that's when we start to expect job seeker to come down. What we're trying to do is also make sure the system is ready. We don't have to wait for unemployment to reach peak and then start trending down for us to be ready to do everything we can and build the capacity and the capability in the MSD system to get people into work as more and more jobs appear as the economy gets better.
How much more challenging will it be to reach that target of 50,000 fewer people?
Yeah, no doubt about it, it's challenging, but all the targets there are deliberately ambitious, and that's why I tried to say up front as to why we're doing targets like this, because we know they're difficult, we know they're challenging, we know they'll bounce around from quarter to quarter, but the point is that it is forcing us to have quite high quality conversations with CEs and ministers as our strategy group, for example, that we run a regular session around to say, well, what more can we be doing around emergency housing, around job seeker? And this is a consequence of those conversations, is to say we actually need to make sure we've got more case management in place, which Louise has done an exceptionally good job of putting into place. She's done an exceptionally good job of just making it clear about obligations. If you think about, we're now seeing a 50%, 52% improvement in the number of people that are actually showing up and engaging with their case manager. As a result, they're showing up for job interviews. They're doing what the 90% who are non-compliant with their obligations are getting compliant within a month. That's exactly what we want to see. So I think Louise is putting good management into place with MSD, but we know we've got more to do.
Minister Upston, is there enough mahi for our whānau and our rangatahi, particularly in the rural areas, given that Jobs for Nature is no longer going to be funded?
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that I'm really encouraged by, if you look to the 4 months, July through to October, we've actually seen 22,000 people exit job seeker benefit into work, which is 4,100 more than a year ago. So despite the economic challenges that the Prime Minister outlined, we are seeing really strong exits into work. So I'm encouraged by that.
In the rural areas, given that Jobs for Nature won't be funded?
Yeah, so one of the things I'm committed to is making sure that the programs that we fund lead to good outcomes, and case management is one of them. That is why we have increased the number of people in case management from about 53,000 to 70, because we know it works, and we want to see more Kiwis off job seeker benefit and in jobs, and that's why we're doing it.
How many are Māori?
About 40%.
Just on that job availability, do you truly believe there are jobs out there? Because we have spoken to someone today who's been looking for a job for 9 months, a former truck driver. They say they simply can't find a job. They've had one interview in the last 4 months. So are there jobs out there for people?
There are, and I accept that it is really challenging. So when you're at this part of the economic cycle, finding employment is tough. But as I said, I'm really encouraged by the fact that we've seen 22,000 people exit the job seeker benefit into work in the 4-month period, July through October, 4,100 more than a year ago. So what we are doing is working, but I won't say for a moment that it's not tough for those that are out there looking for work, and I'd encourage them to keep taking those steps.
How many people now as a number or as a percentage, or how many people now as either a number or a percentage are in the red level of the traffic light system?
1%.
1%.
1%. So, and as the Prime Minister was saying, 90% comply with their obligations within a month. And I've been with Frontline MSD in the last week, and what they're saying is it's really obvious that job seekers now know what are the steps they have to take. And they've had multiple examples when someone's gone to orange, and that's only 0.6%. They've gone on the phone straight away to say, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to get back in green? What are the steps I need to take? So it's also meant that the responsibility is back on the job seeker for doing the things that they need to do, really common sense steps to help improve their chances to get a job.
And that 1% figure, is that more than you had anticipated? Is it about online? Are you happy with that level at the moment?
It's actually lower than I thought we might see. So if you look at it the other way, 98%, over 98% are complying with their obligations and they're at green. So that's great news.
What we're trying to address there, Jason, just so we're clear, is that for decades, if you go back and track unemployment and you track job seeker, there was very good correlation between those numbers. And then in the last administration, you saw a massive disconnect where those two things didn't stay correlated, and they should have. And part of that was because of some of the settings that I think we got wrong, and that's why we put the obligation settings in place. When you have a 52% improvement in people actually showing up for interviews and case management engagement, that's fantastic. That's exactly what we want to do. All we're expecting people to do is to deliver on their obligations, which is quite simple. Show up to your case management, get your resume together, and show up for a job interview. They're not rocket science, but just do those basics. And so that's why the obligation framework's in place, to make sure that people understand that, because their fellow Kiwi, through their taxes, is paying for that and wants to support them in that transition. They don't, we have to do, we're saying jobs are difficult, and we know that there's higher levels of unemployment than we've experienced. We were at 3.2, we're now at 4.8. I'd just say in the last few decades, 4.8 is still, pretty low levels of unemployment, but we've still got a little bit more where we expect it to rise a little bit to 5.2. But we're doing everything we can now to get growth and jobs moving in the right place. Joe?
Louise, those rural isolated communities where we've seen like mill closures and stuff, for example, and there really aren't other options, what is the expectation there around people having to move before, say, disciplinary proceedings kick in?
Yeah, so the point I want to make is the sanctions aren't applied if you can't find a job.
Correct.
They apply if you're not taking steps to find a job, and that's a really important distinction, particularly when we do know it is challenging out there. And for
geographical location as well, though, because there's the expectation that you look for work outside of your town, for example.
If appropriate, and look, I know very well how hard it affects rural communities, and that's why the early response team at MSD are doing a fantastic job where there are those big closures. And if you look at WPI, for example, they've seen a really strong success so far in people being able to relocate, in some cases, for positions. But that really intensive work they do with those that are potentially being made unemployed to help them connect to jobs faster is important.
So just to be clear, though, there wouldn't be any disciplinary measures for people who can't find work within the community that they already live in because of work closures?
Well, there is also assistance to help them relocate to where a job is available. So,
the point where the expectation is that you move?
No, the expectation is that you engage with your case manager. You can't just not take the call and actually meet with them. You actually have to have a resume prepared. That's your job to make sure that comes together. We're putting, career support and other things in place to help you do that. And then thirdly, you've got to show up for interviews. Now, whether the interviews are in your region or outside of your region, you're doing everything you can to find a job. And that's what we're trying to make sure. You're not getting penalised here for not getting a job. You're getting penalised here for not doing your job, which is to look for a job and to be doing your job is in fact to do everything you can to find a job, and that's what the traffic light system's designed to do.
But will you be
penalised though if you're not looking for a job outside your region?
Well, that will be up to individuals, but we would expect people to be wanting to take a job and to do everything they can to get themselves into work and connected with work again.
But people can't exactly.
Sorry, Mikey.
Do you have a bit of an overview at the moment of where those big closures have been? A lot of them obviously are in rural areas. Of what sort of a percentage of those workers have actually found more work?
Yeah, so I don't have the figures on the WPI one, but the Alliance in Timaru, they've had really good success in some of those workers relocating to other meatworks in the South Island. And as I said, there is assistance available to help them do that. They had a really successful job there. So for some people, it will mean retraining. It might mean going into a slightly different role. But that's why those early response teams that MSD have on the ground, working with other employers, working with the sector, working with those job seekers, because the reality is they want to get back in work and quickly, which is why we're providing assistance to them.
But are beneficiaries punished if they do not move for work?
Well, I think that would be a conversation that they would have with their case manager.
Your expectation that they be punished if they refuse to move for work?
No, as I said, they're not being punished if they can't find a job. It's about the common sense steps that they need to take. And look, for some people, they'll have a house, they'll have kids at school, there'll be a whole bunch of life circumstances they have to deal with, and MSD take that into consideration. For those that are affected, this is a massive life shock. And it's really important that the team are working with individuals and their individual circumstances to support them on the next step.
So it sounds like if MSD believes they can move for work and they choose not to, they could be punished?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying, and as I've outlined today, we're taking a very individual approach to job seekers, case by case, depending on their circumstances, and it's providing assistance that is unique to them that might be very different from someone else who's in the same, come out of the same organisation.
There's always been a group that have been sort of the hardened, that have been hard to get off the benefit. What is your sort of perception, or whether you have any stats, I don't know, around what that split is now? Because obviously unemployment has gone up and obviously the numbers have gone up. So what is the number or percentage of the sort of hardened, probably going to be really difficult to move off, versus those who actively do want to find more work? Do you know?
So I can give you a breakdown of those that have been on for longer durations, but I'll give you an example from Southland last week. Of the total in Southland that were on the job seeker benefit, 50% had come on in the last year. So it is really important that we look differently at the job seekers that have come on to job seeker benefit to connect them with employment as quickly as possible. And that's why this really intensive work is important. So we don't want to see benefit dependency increase, which is unfortunately what happened under the last government, which is why we've got a far more active system, far more individualised, so that we can provide the support and individual needs rather than just a blanket approach.
And Joe, just the other thing I was going to say, add to that, was it's really interesting because by virtue of these 9 better public service targets, we're making some improvements in terms of better management, as you're seeing around emergency housing, for example, and some of the other pieces. But when you start to think about kids that aren't attending school, families that are in emergency housing, families that are long-term unemployed, we're getting to a common cohort across all our social services that actually, through our social investment model, we need to innovate more strongly to try things differently to get different outcomes for and with those people. And so that's I'm just trying to give you an insight into the nature of the conversations we're actually having, say in these strategy sessions where Andrew Costa, our new head of social investment, Nicola Willis leading that agenda with our social services ministers, we're starting to get to what that cohort that often has got more complex, more challenged needs. Yes, we can work our way through a lot of it through good management and better process, but equally now we're getting into some of that conversation.
And sorry, you just touched on this briefly before, Louise, but obviously the longer people spend on the benefit, the harder it's to get people off as well. So how concerned are you with the fact that we are going to see unemployment still go up more, we're going to see more people have to go on to job seeker benefit for some time? How concerned are you that as that stretches out, as that becomes consistent, that it is actually going to be harder at the other end too? Well,
that's why we look at, what, with an individual need assessment, what is the barrier that individual faces and how do we support them? Is it mental health counselling? Is it a driver licensing? Is it that we need to get them literacy and numeracy training? So rather than stand back and do nothing, first of all is really look at what is that individual need, case manager to work with them, and a job plan, because we are committed. It's every single person, one job at a time. And that's why this individualised approach is really important.
Prime Minister, can I get your response to the Supreme Court judgment out today regarding the Marine Area and Coastal Act case?
Yeah, look, what I'd say about that is obviously it's pretty new. The decision's just come out. We'll take some time to digest it, and Paul Goldsmith will have more to say about it.
Do you agree personally with the Supreme Court's interpretation of the Act?
Well, as you know, I mean, all we've wanted to do is ensure that the Act is actually what Parliament, the practice is what Parliament intended when the law was passed in 2011. Again, as you can appreciate, it's a pretty new ruling. We need to digest it, and Paul Goldsmith will say more about it.
Will your government continue to pursue that amendment bill? Is your government going to continue to pursue that amendment bill?
Again, what I'll just say is the ruling has only just come out, and we need time to digest it. And Paul Goldsmith, who's leading our MACA legislation, will have more to say about it.
You must have known ahead of this. They could either go one way or the other. You would have had a response either way. I mean, it's a valid question. Are you still going ahead with the amendments? You would have known that this was a possibility, and you would have game planned this out.
Yeah, we've just received the report. As you know, where there was an appeal filed. We got a response within 10 days from the Supreme Court overturning what looks like the Court of Appeal decision. But in fairness, we need time to go through it, and we'll work out next steps from there.
Prime Minister, the International Criminal Court a couple of weeks ago issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the former Defence Minister Yoav Gallant. If either of them came to New Zealand, would we enforce those warrants?
Yes, we support the ICC, and as I've said to you all along, those are matters before the court. But we believe in the international rules-based system. We support the ICC, and we'd be obligated to do so.
Just on a slightly different topic, is the government still planning to clarify and deliver the redress for the Royal Commission into abuse and state care before the end of the year?
We're working. It won't be before the end of this year, as we said at the announcement of the apology. I think you might have been away, Mark, at that time, but what we're doing is we're working very, very hard to make sure that we get a redress system in place. We understand the urgency, we understand the needs of those survivors. I think the government's moving at great pace. Erica Stanford's doing a great job of leading us through it. It's difficult, as I've said, 3,000 pages, 6 years in the making, 138 recommendations, but we know the redress system is a major focus for us. Yep.
Just on that, have you ruled out gang members being part of redress?
Again, all of those conversations are ongoing as to exactly how the redress system will be developed, and we won't be talking about it until we're ready to talk about it.
There's a story on RNZ this morning about ministers talking at a meeting about lowering expectations for survivors. What's your read on that?
Well, I don't comment on cabinet conversations. Yep.
Not sure if we said
it was a cabinet meeting actually.
Sorry?
Not sure it was a cabinet meeting.
A cabinet committee meeting, wasn't it?
They were OIA'd and they were sent out, so the information's out there in the public. So should survivors have their expectations low for redress?
All I'd say to you is we are working incredibly hard on what is a very complex set of issues to make sure that we can develop a redress system that, while it may not meet the needs and expectations of each and every individual, I know that's the reality of it, we as a government are looking for a system response to it, and we're working incredibly hard. There's a lot of issues to work through, there's a lot of complexity to work through, and each and every case is different, and I acknowledge that. And as we've seen in areas like treaty settlements, people have different views as to whether it's too much, too little. That'll be revealed in due course, but we're not going to negotiate that or talk about that through media. Sorry, Claire?
Have you had any briefings on the avian flu?
Yes. I was made aware of that yesterday afternoon. Essentially, on Friday night, MPI were made aware that avian flu was here. It is it's the H7 variant. As you know, it's a mutation of the current avian flu we already have in New Zealand, but you would have had a briefing from Minister Hoggard and MPI on it with the high pathogen piece, and what I'm pleased about is the rapid response from MPI. I'm also really pleased with the engagement that MPI had with the farmer, who was also someone who understood the risk really well and has worked incredibly well with MPI. So, what we see is that there's strict controls in place to restrict, movement of birds. There are no further reports actually of any avian flu beyond the one farm that we're focused on right now. There are no food safety concerns, and importantly, agencies, I think, at this stage have responded very well.
Have you had any modelling done on how much it might cost to control it if there was an outbreak?
Well, I just want to be clear, because there is what's called H5 avian flu, which you all know is the one that we are all concerned about, that's sitting on the wild bird populations, and is the thing that MPI and the agencies have been preparing for, and the sector as well. That is not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is a strand of avian flu in New Zealand that has mutated and become a high pathogen variant of it, and that is what we're now managing. Obviously, the long-term planning around H5 avian flu is something that we really are concerned about, and we're watching. It's going to be transmitted into New Zealand through wild wild birds, largely probably through Antarctica. And so, we've had MPI working very, very well, I think, in preparing for that. But at this stage, that's not present in New Zealand. What is present is the H7 variant, and a mutation of that is what we've seen with the poultry today.
Prime Minister, is the government likely to review the decision not to grant Candaceans a working visa to New Zealand?
Yeah, we have a legal framework, as I understand it, with Immigration New Zealand, where if an application is rejected in Australia, it's essentially rejected here. I know Minister Stanford's taken advice on that, and I'll let her go through that.
And when are we likely to find a decision?
I'm not sure on the timings. I just know the Minister's asked for advice on that. Yep.
Just on the ferries, it's coming up close to the deadline for that decision. Are you going to meet the deadline to have an announcement for us?
Yes, we will.
What have you got?
We said we'd have an answer before the end of this year. Yep.
Okay. No actual date?
December 11th is my understanding, Prime Minister.
Don't you worry, we'll have you an answer and we'll have a ferry solution. Yep.
Just on vaguely nautical related, we haven't really seen, well, actually very nautical related, I don't think we've had a response from you at the report about the Manawanui sinking. What's your reaction to the report, how all that went down?
Yeah, look, I mean, you saw, I thought, a very good debrief from the Chief of Navy and also from Minister Collins last week, as it was identified from this report. Clearly, 100% late at the era of human error. There's obviously more work to do in the first quarter of next year to work out next steps and some more detail around that. But I think the Court of Inquiry process is a really robust, very rigorous one that we can trust completely. I've been it's a very high standard of investigation, and good on the Navy and the Minister for fronting that and being upfront to say it is human error that led to the sinking of the Manawanui.
Are you a bit embarrassed reading that?
Well, look, I mean, it's more important we're transparent and we get the facts out. And, what I have to say is what is a very unfortunate accident, yes, caused by human error. What I have been impressed on is the response from our teams subsequent to that. To give you a feel for it, we've now we've got great monitoring happening in the oceans around whether there's pollutants in there, and we're pretty relaxed there. What we're now focused on is actually getting the uplift of that fuel out of the Manawanui, which actually the salve is on its way, and we hope to start that process mid-December. Work incredibly hard, hopefully have it off before the end of the year, if not around that period of time, and then I'll feel really good about it because we will have de-risked a lot of the environmental impact and threat that sits there. Then we'll work our way through the next set of issues around what happens with respect to fishing bans in Samoa, also with respect to ultimately what happens with the hull itself. And those are questions that we just are working our way through very sequentially, dealing and focusing the system on what it needs to focus on. I had a good chat with Prime Minister Fiame on the weekend again about that, and the way that Samoa and New Zealand have been working together in what has been a very unfortunate accident, and very well. I think it's very impressive.
Did the question of compensation come up in that conversation?
I raised it and talked about that I'm aware of the concerns of folk who have raised compensation. It's been talked about obviously amongst the media, but for right now what we've agreed on is, look, our focus is on uplifting that fuel out of that ship. It's really important, particularly as we head into hurricane season in January, February. Then we'll have conversations around fishing ban and making sure we've got science and evidence that says that it's the Samoan government imposed fishing ban around that area that's impacted a few villages in the south. We need to make sure that we've got good evidence about that everyone's comfortable with that, and then we'll talk obviously about compensation concerns that people may have, and then the future of the hull, whether it's turned into a tourism diving experience or other things. We'll work that way through. But what I'm pleased about is unfortunate accident, yes, caused by human error, good Court of Inquiry process about it. Now we work our way through those issues really in a very focused way.
Prime Minister, can you see New Zealand government delivering a formal apology to the villages affected, but also Samoa for the Manawanui incident? Well,
look, I mean, my conversations right from the get-go and my regular conversations with Prime Minister Fiame has been, that we are sorry for what has been an unfortunate accident. We now have worked our way through it together, and as I said, we will pick up those issues once we're confident we've uplifted all the fuel and we've minimised and de-risked the risk of an environmental catastrophe, which is not what we want to see. And so that's our major focus for now. Those issues we will park and we'll explore later on.
Just on AUKUS and Labor putting the big no sign up over the weekend, what does that mean for sort of the preference around bipartisanship when it comes to that?
Well, I can just say a few things. One is it is really important that we continue to explore whether or not New Zealand would participate in AUKUS Pillar 2. It's important that we explore it as to whether we would proceed or not based off our own national interests. And so, the rather ironic thing is that 12 months ago, that was something that Chris Hipkins was advocating for, and all we've done is continue the work that he kicked off in October 2021 under the Labor government. So, it was a bit, to be honest, it was a bit sad, to be honest, to hear that party and politics is being placed ahead of country when we've actually worked incredibly hard. And I know I did the same thing in opposition, is that on foreign policy issues, where the position has been exactly the same as the previous administration, we actually should have good alignment in that. And so I think it's pretty disappointing to see bipartisanship breaking down on foreign policy because people are putting party and politics ahead of country.
Do you think this might ultimately go the way of TPP?
Well, I think if you called it the Progressive and Comprehensive AUKUS Pillar 2, maybe you'd find a future Labor government may gladly implement it. Yep.
Minister Upston, do you have insights into MSD's engagement with the Pacific community and how many Pacific people are actually getting jobs? Has there been an uptake?
So I don't have that data in front of me, but I do know in terms of the job seeker target, we've got a big push in South Auckland, particularly with young people, and making sure that we are funding programs that we know work for young Pacifica, so that they don't get stuck on the job seeker benefit.
Could you just give a list of the programs that you're looking to fund to target Pacific unemployment?
Yeah, well, so the case management is a big one, and the phone-based case management we've rolled out in the first instance to young people, so that we can identify what are the challenges or barriers they have. Flexi-wage continues to be a well-supported program, as is Mana and Mahi and initiatives like that.
And how confident are you in these programs? We see 1 in 4 young Pacific people are unemployed.
Yeah, so we do know that Māori and Pacifica are disproportionately represented on the job seeker numbers, and when the labour market gets tighter, it is harder for them, which is why we are not sitting back and waiting until the economy turns the corner. We're working intensively with young people now with individual solutions based on their needs.
Great. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time. Thanks for your time. Have a good week.
Thank you.